For what purpose does the gentlelady from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, we originally called this markup to make a vow to the families of the 21 people, including 19 children and 2 teachers who were murdered last week in the 27th school shooting this year. A vow to the families of the 10 people killed in a supermarket by an 18-year-old gunman in Buffalo, New York, just 2 weeks before Uvalde, Texas. A vow to the families of so many mass shootings who have channeled their anger and their grief into pushing for action from Congress to take life-saving measures by passing legislation for common sense, necessary, life-saving gun reforms through the House of Representatives, and demanding that the Senate act to stop the insanity of mass shootings that plagues our country. And yet, before we could even have this hearing today, before the funerals have been held for those who died in Uvalde, just last night, America experienced another mass shooting at the St. Francis Medical Building in Tulsa, Oklahoma. At least 4 people died, people who themselves were working to save lives, people who were parents who left behind children, people who should be alive today. Reports from the scene detail the shooter carrying 2 guns, one an AR-style semi-automatic rifle, like the one used in the Uvalde massacre, but just yesterday, carrying those 2 guns through the medical buildings before the shooting began. And because of Oklahoma's open carry law, hospital personnel were unable to do anything before the shooter began his rampage. And while we don't know the details, let me remind you that Republicans, in their never-ending pursuit to increase the number of guns on our streets and in our schools, passed laws in Oklahoma so that no permit is needed to purchase a firearm from a private individual, no waiting period is required to purchase a firearm, and no firearm registration is required in the state. In Oklahoma, anyone over the age of 21 can openly carry a firearm, including an AR-15, without a license or registration. Weapons that can cause mass devastation are subject to less common sense safety measures than cars or motorcycles. The children of Uvalde are all of our children. The parents in Buffalo and Oklahoma are all of our parents. This is our responsibility, and it doesn't have to be this way. Today, we have a chance to say no more, to refuse to allow our schools and our supermarkets, our hospitals and our theaters, our public places turned into war zones where children hide terrified under desks or in closets, or doctors in medical facilities don't know if they are going to save a life or have their own taken away. Do not tell me that the answer to this is to put even more guns on the streets or to militarize our schools or our theaters or our hospitals with metal detectors and cops. Do not talk about taking away fundamental freedoms when what we are doing by refusing to pass sensible reforms is taking away the fundamental freedom for children to go to school and play and live. And don't tell me that the answer to this is just about mental health. We certainly have mental health challenges that we have to respond to, but countries around the world have similar mental health challenges, but no other modern, wealthy country has these mass shootings as we do. What sets us apart, sadly, is the enormous number of guns and lack of regulation around guns, and most importantly, the lack of political will from Republicans to respond to these mass shootings. When other countries have had a major mass shooting, they have responded and it has worked. In March of 1996, Great Britain experienced the deadliest mass shooting in its history at an elementary school. The shooter murdered 16 children and their teacher and injured 15 others. And in response, the British Parliament banned high caliber pistols. Since then, there has been not a single shooting in the UK. 6 weeks later, the deadliest single-person mass shooting in Australia and the 3rd worst in the world occurred in Tasmania, killing 35 people and wounding 23. Australia passed sweeping reforms, including banning nearly all semi-automatic rifles and shotguns and launching a program to buy back over 600,000 firearms. And since then, there has been only 1 mass shooting in Australia. Other countries have responded to gun violence with decisive action. that effectively wiped away mass shootings. And meanwhile, the United States makes up 4% of the global population, but close to 15% of firearm deaths worldwide. So do not tell me that we don't know what works. We know what works. We know that what we need to do is to pass this bill and say yes to saving lives for our children and our families. Let's do what is right.